closed session. Before we do, is there regarding labor negotiations? Is there any public input before we go into closed session?
On the topic.
On the topic on the agenda? There being none, we're moving into closed session at 6:34 p.m. Okay, we're reconvening. The commission met in closed session to meet with the negotiators for the union for the agency, and no action was taken. We're now up to item number 6 on the agenda, public appearances for items not related to items on the agenda. Does anyone wish to speak to us?
Hi, my name is Tom Poppner from Sonoma. Try the table. Hi, good. Hi, my name is Tom Poppenick. I'm facilities lead for the library. This is a petition to the Sonoma County Library to provide an effective phone system for the library. A phone system is an essential communications tool for a library. The new system installed in September 2012 has not performed to expectations. Sonoma County residents report they cannot reliably reach the library's public service desks, and the library staff are frustrated by the inability to provide the level of customer service the community deserves. We request that the overall effectiveness of the new phone system be evaluated and the vendor held accountable for their product. If the vendor is unable to modify their phone system to fulfill the public and staff's needs, then we please request that a committee be formed to draft a list of minimum requirements and a clear sense of our vision of how the phone system will work, especially at the public service desks. These petitions are signed by members of each branch, and I would like to just give them out to people at the branches and one copy to Tim, if I may.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Any commission response at this moment?
Well, I think we've asked about the phone system in the past, and
Let me ask
been told that
Denise,
things had been corrected.
would you like to come up to the microphone and talk a little bit about the latest visit from Jive and some of the things that you have done? I have to say that they have been, Denise has worked very hard to be as responsive as she could, and when we asked what problems the staff were having. Okay. Pull it down a little.
Yes, that is true. We've worked very hard to try and get this system working the way that the staff do want it to work. We did have a meeting from the Jive representatives last week. One came from Utah, one came from Bakersfield.
Jive is the company that.
And Jive is the company that is the phone company. Those are our vendors. We were really encouraged by the meeting. We told them, you know, you gotta do something. We've done everything that we know how to do, and it's not doing what the staff wants. And I told them about the petition from the staff. And they said that they're more than willing to help us to get it to working the way that we want it to work. One of the main problems that we've had is that their support staff, when you call in for support, you might talk to Bob, and then if you call in for support for the same item, you might talk to Mary, and then you might talk to Sally. So there's not a consistency. So we have requested, and they have agreed for our system to have one representative, one tech representative that deals with our system and knows the little quirks and the stuff that is going on and what we want it to do. So that's one of the things that they're doing. Also, the representative is coming back in August to talk directly to the branches. And probably what we'll do is have them visit the 3 different size branches, one small branch, one medium branch, and then one of the large branches, because they can't be from one end of the county to the other all in one day. And they'll talk directly to the people and get their input and see what they want. Another issue that has come up, one of the things that the staff has said is they really want to be able to have the phone ring any place and pick it up and answer it from across the room. Like it rings at reference and they want to answer it at CERC. And Jive did tell us that they have had other customers that are requesting that same functionality. So right now it's in development, and hopefully within a short time, a couple months, it will be upgraded to where it can do that. Other than that, we've visited branches and we'll continue to do that to see if we can get it working like they want it to. Also, there are training issues. In fact, there's quite a few training issues. And so we will be, Carrie and I will be having one-on-one training sessions with the Jive technicians, and then they suggested that we have like a main person at each branch and train that main person. So we haven't really decided exactly if that's what we're going to do, but we're working on it.
A question. Is this on? So I thought, did we get like an inventory of all the specific problems of the things that weren't working as people wanted? Like as, you know, like a checklist of, you know, the issues we needed to fix?
Kind of. I have to be honest, kind of. For some reason, I have had a hard time getting a real valid list of what the staff wants the phone to do or what they don't like about it. Prior to going on vacation about a month ago, I went around, I talked to the branch managers at the branch managers meeting, went around to the different branches to try and get stuff to working the way they wanted. Then the petition came out, the phones weren't working. So when I came back from vacation, I asked again, what is going on? I'm hearing nothing, but there's a petition going around saying it's not working. So we talked to the branch managers at the branch managers meeting again this month. And I wrote down exactly what they said, and that's the list that I took to the Jive representatives.
I mean, clearly there's dissatisfaction with the system, you know, and so it seems to me if Jive is willing to provide the resources to fix it, you know, if we had a detailed inventory of here are the things that aren't working or aren't working the way we need them to work, you know, and hold Jive accountable then for, you know, here are the whatever number of items there are, you know, that would be a logical next step.
And what would be the form of that accountability?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Okay, if, as Susan is saying, we hold Jive accountable, what does accountable mean? Does that mean that we withhold payment? Does that, I mean, what does accountability look like if we're holding them accountable?
I would say a working system.
Yeah, but if it doesn't happen, then what do we do? I mean, clearly it's, go ahead, Sandy.
Well, I think, first of all, we have to remember that we went through a procurement process that's mandated by the federal government in order to qualify for our E-rate discounts, which are substantial. So that, that drove the process of selecting a vendor. What we'd have to do is look at the contract and see and talk to our attorneys and see what our options might be if indeed the phone system doesn't deliver what it's supposed to deliver.
And I would think to go down that path of walking away from a contractual agreement, you would need to have a specific inventory of,
Right.
here are the things that it was supposed to do, or we were told it would do, or have in our contract it would do, and here's how it's not working, to have evidence to walk away from that contract, if that's even something we're thinking about. So, I mean, on one hand, you want the inventory to try to fix it. On the other hand, I think you need it really well documented of what isn't working if you're going to do something else.
And I think that one of the wild cards in that process is that we have what's called a voice over internet protocol, a VoIP system. And we have to make sure that on our end, our network is up to date and working well. And that's one of the issues that we need to make sure that on our side, we don't have problems that can't be blamed on the phone system.
So it seems to me that this is twofold. We have an internal problem,
Or we're not sure whether we have an internal problem or not.
okay? So we may have an internal problem, and we have a vendor who is not giving us what we want, what our contract says he should give us. Where do we go first?
Well, I think that you have to say that it's not that the contractor isn't giving us what the contract says. I think that the issue is the functionality available in the phone system may not be what the staff ideally would like, and that's what Jive is working with Denise to look at. They made some assumptions about what modern phone systems would do, and I think what we're asking are things that more traditional phone systems do. If I
Yes,
understand
yes.
correctly from some of the conversations Denise had with them last week when they were here. But I think they're willing to work closely. I think the other thing is that we're going to have to probably standardize what each branch, the functionality of each branch. We've tried to be very responsive and tailor the functionality to that functionality that was requested by the branch manager at that branch. And we may have to go to a more standardized profile of functionality in order to make sure that it's working the way everybody wants, if that makes sense.
No, but nothing involving the phone company makes sense.
Well, this is more about internal, how the internal individual phones are set up and that kind of thing.
I understand.
I do feel like, we have talked to the vendors lots. Carrie has worked with them a lot, I have worked with them a lot. And the only thing that I have come up against that it absolutely wouldn't do that the staff wanted was to be able to answer it from one place to the other. Now, the rest of the stuff, I don't think it's a functionality issue. I mean, the phones do everything but talk to you. In fact, they actually will. You can use them from your computer. You just click and it dials whoever you want to talk to. I mean, they do all kinds of things, but we haven't been able to really do any of that stuff because we haven't had time for the training. And the staff, in turn, don't have time to sit down with their phone and go through the thing and figure out how to use it, because it is different. It is different than the old phones that we had.
I'm concerned about the staff always, but I'm interested in what are the issues regarding the public being able to get through? What's happening in terms of the public getting in? Because every time I call, I get in.
Well, let me just recount one experience I had when I called Healdsburg one day, and that's because the phone was ringing and ringing and ringing as it went around the building. And finally, somebody picked it up. So I think what happens if you call because of the setup, you will get interminable ringing because the staff also has chosen not to set up voicemail boxes. So that's not an option that they've decided they want to use. So you don't stop, you just keep ringing and ringing and ringing. So I think that's one of the reasons why.
Is there also dropped calls? Is that something I'm hearing about?
There were dropped calls, yes. In the beginning, there were dropped calls. And Dave Lytell had to do a lot of work on the network.
David is our network
Yes.
administrator.
And we had to get new switches and stuff like that we hadn't anticipated getting. And since he has done all that, it works.
Okay.
We hardly ever Now, if, again, I have to say, if there's calls being dropped, the staff is not telling us. You know, we keep very good records. We have all of our help requests and everything, and we're not getting very, very little complaints about drop calls anymore at all.
Okay, the other question I have is, and I don't know that there's an answer for this, but this has been going on a while,
For a year.
for a full year at this point?
Well, a year in September.
Okay, so it's a year in September. So, and what I'm hearing is there's still more working with Jive and that sort of thing. Is there any idea of a timeline for when this might be resolved?
It should have already been resolved, honestly.
I think Denise has made every.
I
Denise and
understand that.
Carrie.
I'm just saying that, you know, in terms of this petition, it's saying that there be that the phone system be evaluated, and it feels to me sort of like that's ongoing at this point, but I'm not sure about whether a formal evaluation. And that if it doesn't, if the vendor is unable to modify their phone system, that a committee be formed. And so I'm wanting to respond to the content of the petition. So I'm wondering, do we decide in December that a committee needs to be formed, or that they're not doing their, I guess it's just a year's a while. This is not quite a year yet, but it's, and I understand, I'm not saying, I don't think you're not, I don't say you're not doing anything, but is there a way we know when it's gonna?
Well, the Jive representatives are coming in August.
Okay,
I'm expecting in July, prior to their coming, to Carrie and I having some one-on-one classes with their technicians.
okay.
So,
So an update in September?
I would say an update in September would be fine.
Okay.
But Tim, the thing that's really frustrating to me, and I have to tell you this honestly, is if the staff wrote me a list, I could maybe deal with it, but I can't get a list from them.
Okay.
I can't get what's wrong other than once in a while a call was dropped, or I transferred a call and it didn't go through. I can't take that to the vendor because there's nothing to take.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, and is that you need that.
Yes.
And
I mean,
so-
a petition is great, but give me a list of what it's not doing so there's something that I can work with.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Okay. All right. What? Thank you, Kathy. Denise, I'm sorry.
Hi, is this
Hi.
public comment?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kim Papanuck. I'm a children's librarian at the Northwest Branch of Sonoma County Library. I can't speak for all the branches. In my branch at Northwest, the old AT&T phones had 3 lines. 1 line for the circ desk, 1 line for adult reference, and 1 line for children's. So if a call came in, you could see the light that it was a children's call. If I was busy, my colleagues at the adult reference desk would pick up the call. They could hold that call until I was no longer busy, or they could transfer it to my desk. We don't have that. We have 1 line. The phone rings.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Nancy Chimino, and I work downstairs here. But I do fill in quite a bit at the switchboard. And recently, almost every time I fill in at the switchboard, I am dealing with irate patrons who have not been able to get through or have been on hold for a long time, finally have hung up. The last 2 times I worked, I have had to call the help desk, Carrie. One was discovered about 2 hours into the shift that the transfer wasn't working, the transfer system. So I kept getting these calls back and calls back. I think, God, the familiar voices. So finally figured out, so Carrie and we rebooted everything, we did everything, and it finally worked. So that was great. Now, just today, as a matter of fact, I filled in on the switchboard, and for me and Susan, the switchboard operator, figured out that for about 45 minutes, people were calling in, but the phone was not ringing. So whatever happened with that, we didn't get a chance to probably tell you about that because we couldn't figure out what had gone wrong. But most every time I've usually had to call Carrie when I have had problems with the phone. Now, I do know that a lot of people think that we're part of the county. So my understanding, and this is rumor, is that the county, whoever their complaint department is, has been inundated with calls from people complaining about the system. So I think it's a worthwhile thing to check out. Thank you.
Okay, any further comment? That being the situation, let's move on to the library advisory boards. We have a presentation coming from Rohnert Park. Yay. I'd like to thank you for your service and for doing this. And
We're delighted to be here. I'm Barbara McKenzie. I'm the vice chair of the lab at the Rohnert Park Cotati Regional Library Branch. And this is?
Good evening, I'm Brian Masterson, one of the lab members.
Good evening, I'm Leah Condi, the newest lab member.
And Brian Masterson is also our chief of public safety. And Leah is the daughter of Lynn Condi, and our library is on Lynn Condi Way. She was the mover and shaker who got a whole lot of the community impetus going to get our new branch library. Anyway, this is our gorgeous Rohnert Park Cotati Regional Branch Library. It's 10 years old, and just 2 weeks ago, we had a birthday party, which was another success, which we're not even reporting about. We don't even have any pictures of that, but we had probably 200 people, and we even had a wine bar, and we had music, and it was a huge, big celebration for 10 years. So it's a beautiful facility. We're very proud of it. Let's see, I'll just say that I joined the lab about a year ago, and I went to a meeting, and we kind of marched through the agenda and kind of rubber stamped everything, and then I went home, and I thought, is that all it means to be on a lab? So I came to another meeting, I think it was a commission meeting or something, and heard that one of the other branches, I believe it was Guerneville, had an open house where they wanted to hear from the public. So at the next meeting, I brought that idea to our lab and said, shouldn't we be doing more connecting to the community, communicating with the community? Isn't that what our job is? And so we all decided that we would have a couple of open houses in our branch so we could listen to what people had to say. So we scheduled them for March, and you want to do the next slide? With the help of our branch manager, Nancy Claiborne, and the library people, I'm not sure who did this, but somebody does a really nice job at the library, made this nice little flyer. So we had flyers, and we posted them around, and we had them in our bookstore, and we kind of got the word out that we were having these open houses. We had two. We wanted to have one for working people and one for, well, everybody on the weekends. So we had one on a Wednesday evening from 5 to 7, and then we thought, what the heck, we'll have another one on Saturday from 1 to 3. So we're trying to reach as many people as we possibly could. So this was our flyer, and next slide. We went over and got a banner from Heinz Science in Cotati, and had a really nice big banner on the side of our building. Library open house, had our dates and stuff. It was kind of hassle to hang it on the side of the building, but Lisa Moore is there on the left. She was our lab chair until our last meeting, where she's had to resign due to all the thousands of other things that she does. And me and Nancy Claiborne, our branch manager. So we're happily standing in all the great big plants out there, trying to point our sign to people. The next sign. Ready and waiting, that's Lisa Moore. Standing outside in the hallway, the lobby of our library. We have this, those of you who've never been there, anyway, we have a beautiful lobby, and right off to the side we have a really neat meeting room called the Armando Flores Meeting Room, and that's named after a long-term member of the Rohnert Park city council, who was very involved with Lynn Condi in getting this library built. So anyways, we have this in the lobby there, and again, Nancy Claban and the library staff had gotten us this really neat big poster, so we had that out there in the hallway, and Lisa's waiting, and she's a very friendly person, and she was kind of, you know, don't you want to come into our open house? Then the second picture is a picture of our youth member who we just lost, who's a fantastic member of our lab, Brianna Walsh, me, and Lisa again. It looks like nobody's there, but that's because we were just opening up. There are actually a lot of people arrived. Next slide. There is Tim May, our chair of our commissioners, and he came and had a good time, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And he is talking to one of the members of the public. You can see our sign there that says this is sponsored by Friends of the Library. As you all know, up until, I guess we don't quite have any money yet, but the labs don't have any money. So in order to pay for the food and the snacks and the water and everything, we had to tap the Friends of the Library. So we have a nice sign there acknowledging the fact that Friends of the Library, I'm also on that board, paid for everything. And then at the adjoining slide is Chief Masterson in his actual work clothes and talking to a member of the public getting ready to go in. So we were beginning to listen to people. And I'm going to hand the microphone off to Brian right now because his staff at Public Safety put together this PowerPoint for us, and they did a nice job in this categorization.
Thank you, Barbara. So as she was saying, what we wanted to do was to get as much feedback from people from the community about their library, and then take that feedback and put it in a PowerPoint that we're presenting tonight. So some of the categories where people could come in, we had Post-it pads where people could write, and they were broken down into hours, general comments, and then books and materials. Next slide. So again, these were recommendation, comments, suggestions taken on the 2 days that we did the open house, and we had close to...
We had 160 people.
So 160 people, so we had really good participation. I always say if you bring free food and a little wine, you get a lot of people, and we did. We got a good, they got community outpouring from both Roanoke Park and Katati. A lot of young people, college students, the whole gamut of our community. So one of the most popular things to put down on the comments was open Mondays. We had 30 people who, obviously missed not having the library open on Mondays, and that was their hope that somewhere the lab could work with the commission to reopen, Mondays at the library. More evening hours was next. Again, 13 people put that down as something that they would like to see from the lab and the library. Longer hours, 14 people. And then Sunday, there were 6 people that were interested. And again, local libraries to have similar hours instead of having different hours. And there's council member Ahanatu from Roanoke Park City Council, who's also on the lab. And again, you see him at one of the pads where people could just come up and write their comments. Next slide. So again, the recommendation, comments, and suggestions. And again, some of these were only maybe 1 or 2 people putting their comments down, but we felt they were important enough to put on the slide. And again, you can see some of them from playing board games. There were a number of people that were concerned about access for people coming into the library, accessing porn sites, improving the collection of DVDs. Some people say library is too noisy. I think you're always going to get those, but that means that the library is being used, so that's a good thing. Increased Native American book selections. Again, some beading craft books for Native Americans. Free box to donate and take books. I thought that was a pretty good idea. Someone made the recommendation as you come into the lobby of the library, place a book where people could kind of give and take books as they please. And then have some library services on public access, channel 26. Probably no surprise here, higher speed internet. We're always looking for something quicker, faster. More articles, books in Spanish. They wanted some more outreach to high schools, and I think our lab's in the process of trying to expand and improve a teenage library area, which I think will be well received by a lot of the young people in the community. One suggestion, have a movie night in the meeting room, poetry jams, literature workshops, tax help workshops, and college application workshops. Some of these comments more geared towards the younger children, baby gates in the children's section for parents, more community events involving music and speakers, more children's programs, art show, bookstore, more computers. And again, these were all shared with the staff there at the Roanoke Park Cotati Library. Some of the positive things that they felt that was going on in the library was the Shakespeare program. They felt that the resources and the staff were very friendly. They said that the learning environment was excellent, a great summer reading program, special music programs, books from other libraries, and they loved the bookstore. If I can just share something with you, I spent 28 years in Alameda County, worked in the sheriff's office in Oakland. And when I came to Roanoke Park, and the first time I walked into the library here, I was amazed. It was probably the nicest city or county-run library that I had ever seen. And it's such a great opportunity for young people to really learn some things and make connections and use the internet. And we spend a lot of time in public safety in my profession about how do we stop, the recidivism of crime, and how do we stop young people from being engaged in gang and drug activity. Well, one of the things is libraries and having things that encourage them to use their mind for creative good and stop that recidivism. So I'm very proud of the library that we have, and I think it's an excellent resource, and I'm very proud of the work that the library staff do. I know things are tight all over with our budget constraints, but the staff, they've always got a positive attitude, and they always go out of their way to help people.
These are just some nice photos of our beautiful library, and I encourage anyone who has never been to the Roanoke Park Cotati branch to come down and see it. I also wanted to mention that this library was built with redevelopment funds, which of course cities don't have anymore. Thank you very much, State of California. But anyway, it was a really great use of our money. And let's see, that one, I think just has some more good ideas, lots of positives. And this one I wanted to point out, see the kind of dome up there on the top? We have a fabulous children's reading room, and we had a contest, I believe, for an artist to come in and paint that, so it's kind of like we have our own version of the Sistine Chapel, right? So it's wonderful, and then underneath it is a big, beautiful colored carpet that the Friends of the Library purchased. So we have a really neat children's area, and lots of people commented on the children's computers. They love bringing their kids in there for computers. Leah, did you have any comments about the children's area? Just trying to give her an opportunity. She wants to say something. Yeah, she's all grown up now. Did you want to comment?
Sure. Okay. In my professional life, I am actually a social worker, and I work with youth ages 14 to 24, and I'm also a credentialed teacher. And so our biggest focus in social work is literacy and employment, which is why I was really, encouraged to join the Roanoke Park Cotati Lab. And obviously, my family, it's in the blood. So I was actually there when the artist was painting on his back, literally like the Sistine Chapel. It was amazing. Every time I walk in there, I see the kids, and they look up in the sky, and their faces are just, it's art, it's literacy, it's community. It's a beautiful place. So obviously I'm into it. I drank the Kool-Aid.
Thank you, perfect. So there are some more suggestions. I think you probably can read this. Bringing back the mobile bookmobile. Study room for teens, we're working on that. Anyway, you can kind of, read through these yourself. Next slide. And this is, I guess I can stand over here. This is, again, part of the lobby area. This is a really neat little kiosk that, again, the Friends of the Library bought. It has all kinds of notices, public notices on there. Right behind there, you can't quite see it, we have a new collection of foreign language books. Our librarian, Nancy Claiborne, decided that, we needed to have some get rid of some of our old moldy, handful of foreign language books, and so she's building a collection in German, Italian, and other languages coming up. So that's right behind there. And then this is a really cool thing, since I'm singing all the praises of our library. The Friends of the Library, our branch is one of the very fortunate ones that when the city built us a new building, they built us a room. Actually, we have our own bookstore. This bookstore is open almost all the hours that the branch is open. We make $800 to $1,000 a week. And so we have lots of money, and we spend lots of money on books and materials and programs, and we're very, very proud of this bookstore. It's right behind here. And we sell, 100% donation, 100% volunteer. It's so, really wonderful. And I can't say enough about the women who have worked there for 30 or even 40 years as volunteers with the Friends. They're just amazing. I have a picture of them here coming up. But anyway, one of the things that our Friends does is when a book is on hold and there's 300 people that want it, our branch manager goes in, checks the numbers of holds, and then when there's some certain number, I'm not sure what she uses, we buy more copies. So the Friends buy 5, 10, 15 extra copies of those books that are really very popular. Now, they don't go out into the intra-library system. You have to walk in and get them. Anybody can come in and get them from any branch, but we keep them right there. So it's a wonderful extra that, another thing that the Friends funds. Next, please. So thanks to the Friends, again, for supporting the open houses. They're the one that paid for everything. We had food, we had water. As Brian was saying, these are the clipboards the posting boards we had back here, people writing their comments. And these are two of the women who have done so much for our library, Joan Schmutz, who is the library bookstore manager, and Dawn Schaefer, who has been a friend of the library and on the lab also for many, many years. They're just fabulous. There's something else we had here, which was a sign-up sheet. If you wanted to become a member of the lab and you were interested, we had a sign-up sheet, and we also had sign-up sheets for becoming members of the Friends of the Library. So we were trying to work all the angles at this party. And again, thanks to all who participated in open house. We really thought we had a really good community turnout. Part of that was that I went in and got on the PA system. I said, come and see us in the community room. We have cookies and whatever. And then so we had a flood of people. So it wasn't that everybody just wanted to come, as Brian was saying, to get some goodies and people will come in here. And this is a nice view of how beautiful our library it is, how open and welcoming it is. And we will soon, over on this particular area over there, have a separate teen section that won't be walled off, but it'll be have banners, and it'll be in different colors so people can tell that it's a distinct teen area. So we're really happy about that, and I don't want to go on too long, but I did want to say that I have gone to the last 4 JPA meetings. We've done a lot of talking about labs. I think the labs are a very important part of the overall library system. We're proud of what we do. We're a little unclear about what it is we're also supposed to be doing. And this was our first step to really hear what the community had to say. Now we have all this information, now what do we do with it? So we're looking forward to the further deliberations of the JPA committee and of your commission on what further role, hopefully an expanded role, that the labs can play. Because we think as community members that we have we want to hear, and then we want to do something with that information that we gather. Did either of you want to say anything else before I go? Did anybody have any questions of us?
I do. Can we get at least the part of the positives and the recommendations in writing? Because even though you let us, my eyesight, I couldn't read them, and I think it's important I see them.
Yeah.
Can we just have a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yeah, and you do, I believe. I mean, this is in your system. They didn't even put my thumb drive in there. Yeah.
I just want to say, I was there at the open house.
You were.
And it really opened my eyes that, I always believe that the community is only as good as its library. And I think this was a good example. The community really came out.
You did.
And I was just, do you ever try to get anybody to write on a suggestion and you can't do it, But people, there was young kids, there was adults writing all sorts of suggestions. They really got into it. And
They did.
I was really pleased to see that. I mean, that's what libraries are about, is the community. And I just have to say one thing. One of the things about keeping the hours open later at night was Sonoma State students come down to the library and use the library to study. So, you got the whole community out there. So I want to thank all 3 of you for coming all the way up north here to present this. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I echo the thanks, and I think you're right, the JPA and the whole past period is helping us to clarify labs more, and this is the kind of thing that people are doing. Thanks to Sebastopol for kind of getting that started, and also, I believe, Guerneville, didn't Sebastopol? Guerneville did, but that was their friends, right?
No, it was the lab and the friends.
Okay, and then Sebastopol, and then, okay, good. Petaluma's thinking about it, I know. Any other comments from commissioners on that? Thank you. The next item is a new item on our agenda, and it's a chance for any members of the, representing a lab that has some issue that they want to directly talk to the commission about. This is the time to do it. This is new, so it may not be that there's anybody here today to do it, but it is, it'll become part of our agendas from now on. If anybody, is there anybody there from a lab who would like to present now? Okay. Any comments from the public regarding the presentations?
Stephen Alcorta, reference librarian here at Central. Just want to praise Roner Park in that I take photos of as much public art as I can around the county. And when I was investigating and taking pictures of all the wonderful art that they have, I was directed by various art groups and art people to go to the library, that they were the place to find out about art and to find out about how the community could work with it. And one of my favorite pictures that I have personally is if you go outside, you'll see a wall that has letters from all around the world. In the middle is a ring. And when I came to the library, sitting in that ring, reading a book, was a little girl. And it's just one of those classic moments you say, art, library, community. And I really want to praise Roner Park for achieving that.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 8, commissioner reports. First is comments from major items from labs around. You want to start?
Sure. This one is a little bit dated, but I was not at the June meeting, and I just wanted to comment briefly on the Cloverdale Lab meeting from May 14th, which again, a little bit dated. They had an art exhibit, since we're on that topic, from May 4th through May 31st, which looks like it was, a really nice event where they featured different art, local artists, and that was really nice. Also, the Cloverdale Library participated in what they call Friday Night Live, which is kind of a public event in Cloverdale, and they were signed up for May 31st as well as June 21st, where they're promoting the library and the Friends are selling books. They had done that previously, and I think it was quite successful, and we're planning to, doing that again. One item that I just want to bring to everyone's attention, not unfortunately happy news, but just reality that's still out there, which was there's work needed on the roof of the Cloverdale branch, and previously the roof work or roof repair was very high on the Public Works top priority, but unfortunately Cloverdale's in very poor financial straits, kind of getting worse, and they're having to cut many expenses, even things like Meals on Wheels, and, just really, difficult decisions in terms of cutting services. And so there is no money now for the roof work. So that was just, just financial reality.
Sebastopol met on June 5th, and Guerneville and Sebastopol will both meet a week from Wednesday. So I don't have anything to report on Guerneville, although I see some of their members here, if they had anything to say. Sebastopol has been busy. They reported they had been doing public outreach, and they tested their new process. And the question that they asked the public to weigh in on was about e-readers, and if the public likes to have e-readers, if they prefer hardback books or audiobooks, or so they had, and they widely publicized this. So it might take the public a little bit of time to start noticing that they're being asked for their opinion. They had 137 responses. 12 of those were from Facebook. So they were a little disappointed that they didn't have more of a response from their community, but they're going to continue on with the process. The lab member, Barbara Briggs-Ledson, who had started this particular process, has unfortunately become very busy and had to drop out of being on the Library Advisory Board. We have 2 new recent members and 1 additional vacancy, I believe. So the Sebastopol Library had another open house, and that took place on June 12th, and it was very kind of relaxed. It wasn't a very structured affair, but they had a lot of comments and a lot of participation, and felt that it was very worthwhile, and I think we'll hear more about that at the Library Advisory Board meeting coming up. The Friends of Sebastopol reported that they netted $4,600 at their May book sale.
The Windsor Lab will meet on Tuesday, so I don't have anything to report on them. They haven't had a meeting in a while. The Healdsburg Lab, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. One wasn't the lab, but it certainly came up at the lab meeting. The wine library received a $40,000 grant. When I talked to the librarian about what he was going to do, he said, we're going to develop a worldwide digitized base of information about wine libraries. So if anybody would like to know about a small, obscure winery in southern France, give us a year and I'm sure we'll be able to tell you. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I do know that they got the grant, they're very happy about it, and they have a whole plan on how to get started on it. Charity, the children's librarian, gave a presentation to the lab, and I've been going in there frequently because I kind of hang out at these children's programs because I think they're fascinating. They had some stuff in the past couple of weeks. They had a magician, and the kids were just going nuts, and I guess these go around to a number at the libraries. And we had, was it Ron, the Snake Man or something? It was amazing. I mean, he was scaring the bejesus out of some of these kids, but they just loved it. So that program is going full speed ahead. You can't get into the room when they're putting them on, and that's just nice to see. The wine library had a meeting and a lecture and wine tasting, and I would urge you, if you see it on one of the bulletin boards, come on up to one of the wine library meetings because they have some excellent wine and usually some very good winemakers or vineyard owners come in and give talks. Bo Simon, with a couple of other people in the whole library community now, they began a couple of months ago, and they met with Efren Carrillo, who was one of the supervisors, and they are putting together a Amigo de la Biblioteca, which is a county-wide community, and they're trying to gather some of the Latino members of the community and ask, what is it that you folks want? What is missing in the library? What can we do for you to make the libraries a more attractive place? I know Bo is working with a number of other people. He's the only one I can cite and pat on the back because he's the only name that comes to mind right at the moment. And it shows up here in one of the items we'll cover tonight. The HVAC is finally going to be put into the Healdsburg Library, long overdue. We have our fingers crossed that we can get it in by the end of the winter anyway. But,
The end of the summer.
and it has nothing to do with the library, it's the city, and we've been going back and forth on this, but I think we've just about gotten things ironed out, so that will be happening pretty soon. And, there's part of the wine library, there's a small courtyard which was put together by donations named after Millie Howie, who was one of the originators of the wine library. And if you come by there one morning a week, and the morning differs about 10 o'clock, you can have coffee and pastries donated by one of our wonderful bakeries up there in Healdsburg. So we invite you all to come by.
Paul?
Well, I had a report for the Roanoke Park Cotati Regional Library Advisory Board, but I think Barbara Lee and Brian pretty much gave it, and much better than I can. But there's a few other points. So we had the lab meeting on Tuesday, June 18th at 4 p.m. And the reason I'm telling you the time is that we're talking about changing that time, which is a little difficult. I mean, there's some of the lab members that work, and I think to attract more lab members, we might change that to the evening. So we're starting to talk about that. Also, the summer reading program, there were 551 kids signed up so far, and it just started. So that, I don't know what the count is now, but I'm sure it's more. And so that was pretty exciting about that. Let's see. Also, we had, the anniversary celebration on June 12th. This is the 10th year celebration. A lot of council members from both Cotati and Roanoke Park came, and it was, once again, the community turned out. And there was, I don't know what the final count was, but the room was packed. And, I got to wear my commissioner badge, so I don't know why, but people thought I was important. So that was good. I got my picture taken by the paper anyway, so that was good. But I really do appreciate that as a commissioner to come to some of these events and see how wonderful the community really supports their library. And I know that's true in the other libraries, but it's something that doesn't always get in the paper or we talk about too much. But gosh, just having this budget crunch and closing on Monday, really we hear a lot about that and how important the library is to the community, and how we got to keep it open 24/7. We need, maybe Bill Gates will help out, but I don't know. So, and the last item is the Friends had a book sale and they brought in $3,200. So I think that's really great. I can't go into that bookstore because I would buy too many books. I'm restricted to 2 a month right now. So that's my report. Thank you.
My lab will be meeting in a couple of weeks. Our meeting last month got canceled because various people were out of town. I can't remember if I mentioned it last time that we had a terrific collaboration between the Sonoma Valley Museum of Art and the library with the photographic exhibit in the library that was tied to the exhibit at the museum. It was the kind of collaboration that I think is a hallmark of Sonoma, and I would like to see us do more of those kinds of joint efforts.
Great. Petaluma, we meet in July. Our meetings have changed to Wednesdays because of various health reasons. We're going to, at the next meeting, probably look at our bylaws, which haven't been looked at in a while. We too have a leak in the roof. And it only leaks when it's a slow rain, but not when it's a fast rain. So just so you are there. A couple of things that are interesting. Jan just did a survey of the volunteers about how effective they felt the volunteering was at the library. And we just got results from that within the day or two ago. And basically, people are overjoyed to volunteer. surprise. But they did request that if you get asked to volunteer, you get responded to sooner. But I thought that was really a neat process that happened. Also, we had a book sale, but I didn't bring the numbers. But the other thing that happened is I was talking to Kate, who happens to be sitting in the audience, so I was going to bring this up anyway, Kate. She was saying that she's working this summer with 45 teen volunteers, and that just that number, I used to teach classes of 30, but there's a halo. But what I was, again, I'm continue to be just impressed with the dedication of our staff and the fact that not only, that's a lot of work. It's the volunteers in this particular case probably balance what's getting done with what has to be done. And the fact that that Kate sees this as a way to serve the community is also important to note, I think. That's it for me on that particular item. Next, we have the committee reports. I don't believe the Joint Powers Committee met, so there's no report there. The Revenue Committee, did you meet? No. No? Okay. And then the only other thing I noticed isn't on this agenda, but that we have a new committee that's doing the annual report, but they don't start till August.
Right.
They were appointed at the last meeting.
And they were appointed at the last meeting.
Didn't we, was
Well,
Susan going to be part of that?
We
As
haven't,
Paul and-
Paul and you and Susan may be a consultant.
She just is hearing about this for the first time.
She was absent at the last meeting, and so,
That's what I get for missing the meeting?
yeah, that's what you get. Okay, any public comment on item number 8 on the commission reports? Okay, moving right along, we are going along, approval of the minutes. Do I have any motion about or the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, it was moved by Tom. Second? Seconded by Mary Evelyn. Are there any changes or comments or anything? All right. Is there any public comment about the meeting, the minutes? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. The motion is to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Maybe I have to abstain because I
You have
wasn't here.
to abstain, yeah.
Right.
One abstention. Susan. Okay. Moving right along. That one was done fast. Correspondence and press coverage. I'd like to take this opportunity during this period to talk, just because I think it's important to be sure that the record is clear. I believe in the Bohemian article, I was misquoted. And so I want to be sure that I clear up what I said. And if anybody would like to see the email that I sent to the author, I'd be more than happy to let you see it. But basically, there is some confusion in terms of the article about my presence on June 20th when the discussion about Burlingame Hall happened. And I was here on June 20th when the vote to use Burlingame Hall occurred. I was ill during the discussions to have that, using that. So just that, I wanted to be clear because it did say that there was an indication by reading the article that I was that the discussion happened on the 20th, and the vote happened on the 20th, but the discussion happened previously. And the other thing that was in there that I thought was not quite what I had said, I believe it says something to the effect that while I realized it was legal to use the fund balance, and that's not exactly what I said. What I said in the response to him was that I make a distinction between using of the fund balance for one-time expenses and the library's ongoing budget to meet ongoing expenses. And there's a complete distinction for me for those two items. I'm only taking the time to say this because I know that once things get printed, they become truth, and I'd like to be able to be sure that they seem to become truth, to say what exactly I said to him. Any other comments about any of the press coverage? There are several articles in the envelope. I was interested in one of them that Helena saw, that Cotati would like they would like a station. Okay. Okay, any other comments about press coverage? Any comments from the public? All right, the consent calendar. There are no items, so moving right along to action items. There are no action items. By resolution, action item by motion. Approval of the updated agreement with the city of Healdsburg.
Jamie can answer any questions you have.
Who can?
Jamie?
Jamie, okay. Any questions?
I'm not sure it's a question, but it's a comment. This lease seems different from the agreements between the library and various other cities. I'm concerned about the precedent it sets. The library doesn't have the money to foot these kinds of expenses for all of the other branches. I'm not quite sure why Healdsburg is so different.
Little background here. Healdsburg has not had a lease in time immemorial, if they ever had one. They never had a lease. This document is not an actual lease. It's just an agreement, my understanding, relative to how the city and the library deal with the installation of a much-needed new HVAC. And this conversation had been going on for months. And the city took the position, well, we want a new lease. And the library's position was, no, we don't want a lease.
No, that was not our position. Let me be perfectly clear.
Okay.
We have been trying to negotiate a lease with them for several years. Their position was that they didn't want to have to support any part of the building.
Okay, but that was an element in a discussion of a proposed lease, was it not? That
They
was
came
one-
in and basically said they were not willing to pay anything to help support the library, and didn't feel that they had a role in the library. So that was the only thing that we discussed that day.
Okay, that was at the very first meeting, but then there were a number of other meetings, and I was not party to them. They were negotiated by a county attorney.
Well, the city eventually chose to put the lease negotiations on the back burner.
Right.
Because they're hopeful that the JPA will
Right.
will require the library to do more in terms of maintaining the building.
Yes, I think the entire story, though, was that let's see what the JPA comes up with,
Exactly,
and let's not get into anything premature.
right.
So,
That was their position.
yeah, that was their position. So this is, Mary Evelyn, this is not a lease as such. This is
Okay,
simply...
I misspoke. It does, however, commit the library to part of the purchase and for ongoing repairs.
Yes.
I don't think that's the same in most other cities. And I'm concerned that if we say yes to Healdsburg, it's going to be a parade.
Precedent setting.
And we don't have that money.
The library is in a difficult position. If we don't agree to this, the city can say, I'm not putting in your air conditioner. Then we have neither heating nor air conditioning. And it was in very, very bad repair. It was, an outside consultant came in and took a look at the whole thing and said, if you get through the summer, you'll be lucky.
It's been
Never
on
mind
its
the
last
winter.
leg for several years. It's
Yeah.
needed replacement, but the
And a
city,
lot of money has been spent on it over time.
library money.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I don't like the precedent at all, because this can be then become, going forward, a model for every other association, whether it be a lease or whatever, with all of the other cities.
Yeah, and I almost feel like it's rewarding bad behavior on the part of the city of Healdsburg.
Okay.
In terms of
explain.
refusing to negotiate it and to be recalcitrant. No, 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 we won't pay. That doesn't work for me.
What would you do?
I don't know.
That's my position.
As-
I don't know.
Just in terms of the JPA, in terms of setting a precedent, in terms of the current discussion at the County JPA Committee, they are going to be suggesting, first of all, Healdsburg's there. All of the cities are represented. And they are going to be suggesting some standards for leases, and going to be suggesting through, now, Sandy, you've been there, so you maybe can clear this a little bit better, but my interpretation is that they're saying that the JPA shouldn't be saying what's in leases, but that they're going to make a collection of recommendations for bylaws, and they're going to include in the bylaws suggestions from the county JPA committee about what elements should be, that all cities should have leases, and that what should be covered in those leases. So it may be that this is a one-off that's not going to be a precedent, but it may also be.
I share your concern. I don't like this at all. But the staff, and as well as the city, people who have come in said, this is an ancient piece of equipment, and we don't know how long it's going to last. So the city can say, it's your problem. And we can say the same thing back to the city, but here we are, at the rock and the hard place.
I agree. It's a rock and a hard place. And the commission is charged with the long-term health of the library. And I think this puts us at risk.
I agree. I agree. And believe me, I and a number of other people have looked at alternatives. I don't have one.
Any other commissioners want to? I really should probably get a motion. Is there a motion?
I have one thing in here which I think I would like to suggest. In the first paragraph, in the draft motion, and to assume, I would cross out the word full responsibility for all future costs of the system above certain agreed-upon amounts, because there is some language in here that if it gets to be up too high, there will be good faith negotiation between the library and the city as to who might share the cost of maintenance.
Let me get that again. You said enter.
Okay, I would cross out full,
Full,
and then
right.
at the very end, add above certain agreed-upon amounts.
But that means the library's assuming responsibility above certain agreed-upon amounts.
Well, do you want to specifically reference the $3,000 that are on this agreement page here?
We could do that.
It would be to assume responsibility for all future costs of maintaining the system that are $3,000 and below.
Less than 3,000, or the do not exceed 3,000.
Okay, do we have language?
Not to exceed. That's what's on this.
No, Sandy's drafting, because we're going to be asking for a motion, and we want to have the language.
I'm just trying to get it correct so we have it when the time comes.
Okay.
Before we go to the motion, let me be real clear here. So if we do not agree to spend this money, what is the risk to the library? Would it have to shut down eventually if the system went?
Depends on how hot in the summer and how cold in the winter it got.
Right, it be pretty uncomfortable during
Yeah.
those times. And
Yes.
probably the library would have to shut during those
I
times.
expect so,
Okay, so that's what we're really, that's the bottom line.
yeah.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to approve the amended, can you read the amendment for sure, just it's,
The motion, the draft motion is, I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission authorize the library director to execute an agreement with the city of Hillsborough to pay 50% of the cost of a new HVAC system not to exceed $72,748, and to assume responsibility for all future costs of maintaining the system that do not exceed $3,000.
Okay, that's materially different from what appears in the background.
I don't, say some more.
It says we're on the hook for $3,000 and not a dime more.
I think that's per incident, right?
Yeah, no, that's not permanent, I don't think.
That's not total, that's like per,
That's what we would
So the
maintain
language
it
needs to be
over if there's a.
Well, let me say that most leases have a similar clause that we say will maintain it if the cost is up to about $5,000 in most of them. I'm looking at Tom because he does this all the time too. So this is not, that clause is not unlike some of the other clauses we have. If we make sure the agreement, I'm going to ask Jamie to come over because she knows this agreement as well as anybody.
So do we need just to clarify that it's per episode, the 3,000, and not a cumulative amount? That's what we're talking about?
Let's see, SCL, we accept responsibility for all repairs that do not exceed $3,000. So that's what the agreement says.
per repair?
Well,
And if it,
that's not on. Yeah. Per incident.
Per incident, yes.
So we probably want to suggest that the agreement be clear about that too. I don't know.
I thought the agreement was clear
Yeah, I think
in what
it-
you just read.
the agreement.
It might have been the cover memo that wasn't
Yeah.
as clear.
And theoretically, since this is a new system, right, we don't expect to have that kind of cost for some years.
It has a warranty.
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
warranty on it. We're expecting it will last for, I mean, the one that's in there now was, how long's the library been there?
30.
How many?
It's 30 years old.
And,
30
okay,
plus.
so the system is 30 years old.
So I just wanted to say that my disappointment with this is that there's been this year-long delay, and when we had agreed to do this last year, and that Tom says this is not going to get in until December.
Well, yeah,
No,
this
they're
is
going to,
bec-
that's not correct. They're going to,
We-
we're waiting for the city to vote, and as soon as they vote, then the agreement is that they'll have it in within a couple of weeks.
Yes, we were bringing this to you tonight in anticipation of the city council approving it at their July 15th meeting, so they haven't actually approved this yet themselves, and they'll be discussing it at that meeting, along with approving the lowest bidder and awarding the contract to the
Yeah,
lowest
so
bidder.
it's going to take a couple of months before this happens to approve it, and then get the lowest bidder, and then have him come in. I
Well,
don't
we have a lowest
anticipate.
bidder.
He's
What the
identified.
city told us was that within 10 days, the work could begin, within 10 days of them approving it at the
Oh,
city
okay.
council.
Okay.
That's what they said. What the
Okay.
work will
And how
begin
long
means, I'm
did
not
they
sure.
think it would take?
Oh,
Get it
they
in.
can get it in a couple of days.
Okay.
Because all the ductwork and everything is there. It's just this big monster machine on the roof.
Could I have a motion, please?
I so move. I so
Okay.
move. As-
Elena moves. Is there a second?
Second?
Tom seconded. Any further commission discussion? I do have one quick math question. I'm hearing, is the lowest bid is 132, is that right? 132 and some change, 200? And we are to pay half of that?
Or less. They've applied for a grant,
Okay.
and there may be some
So
money coming.
half of that is around 66,000, so we're approving,
Yes, that's the 10% for contingencies.
okay, all right. Any other discussion from the commission? Okay, any questions or comments? Should I do each one for the public, or wait till we're done with all of these?
No, do that one.
Okay, any
before the
comments
commission
from the
votes.
public on this particular item? Okay, there being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll vote for it, and I think we have opened Pandora's box. I think it's a mistake.
Okay, the motion has passed unanimously. I don't know that we have hesitation as one of the options. Okay, moving ahead to the approved agreements. This is, includes the policy information.
That was just included for your information,
Right.
so you,
First one is the workers' compensation insurance policy.
and Patrick is available to answer any questions about that.
Okay, do we want to have a motion first?
Yes.
Okay, does I have a motion?
Sure.
Okay, Helena has moved. Do I have a second?
That's-
I mean, not Helena.
Mary Evelyn.
God, Mary Evelyn has a, and do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Paul, seconded. Questions from the commission?
Well, I had sent over questions
Yeah, and I think,
previously. And, you know, one of them was just clarifying that really we only had, you know, very few interested parties bidding on us, and that it seemed that that was tied to our experience record, and it seemed like our experience had, you know, our declined over a relatively short amount of time. And so just any additional color as to why that experience?
why the X-mod is higher?
Mhm.
Where
I
is
think you
Patrick?
talked about that at the
Patrick,
last meeting.
want to talk about that, please? I think you'll also notice while Patrick's sitting that the state has mandated an 8% increase in rates. So it's not just the X-mod.
Right, but then it seemed like the X-mod was the reason so few wanted to bid on it.
That is a primary reason. And some of the reasons for that increase in the X-mod relates to the severity of claims and the number of claims.
Right.
The Workers' Compensation Insurance Rating Bureau looks at a 3-year rolling history. So even if you've done well in the current year or even the prior year, it matters what's happened in, you know, the 2 years before that. And we had a particularly bad year, 2010, 2011, and that won't drop off yet for another year. So that's part of the reason for the increase in the X-mod. The good news is our severity of our claims and the number of our claims this year is less than last year, and last year was less than the 2010, 2011. So we're going in the right direction, but we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And
We're
yes,
still there again. another rock and a hard
many of, most of the carriers did refuse to bid on it because of the X-mod, so.
But for me, the issue is the issue of frequency and severity, and what you are saying is that that's declining.
Yes, so we just had a claim review this past Friday, for example, and have some just rough estimates of where we are for the 2012-2013 year. And our severity is about $70,000 yet less if we look at the 3-year period from now going back versus the 3-year period of which all these numbers are based on, okay?
It is $50,000 less than we had been told to project, so that's the little silver lining.
Yeah, well, and it's good that we're moving in the right direction, right, certainly.
And I would also have to say we've had good experience with Berkshire Hathaway, Cypress Insurance, also with Wells Fargo, who's our broker on the account. They've been extremely helpful in addressing some of these issues, in closing claims, providing support as far as ergonomic evaluations, training, what have you. So we have some excellent resources right now that weren't necessarily always available to us when we had state compensation fund.
Any other questions from the commission? Comments from the public?
Hi, my name is Guma. I'm wondering if the commission has ever considered looking at the rejection rate on claims for these different carriers. I realize that the rising cost of healthcare and the rising cost of workers' comp insurance is an issue for the library, but I'm assuming that you don't want to select the lowest bidder at the expense of rejecting valid claims. So I think that perhaps you should keep track of the rejection rate on these different carriers.
In terms of the current year, we've only had one claim rejected as not being compensable.
Out of how many?
Well, this year we've had 11. So adding that, it would have been 12 claims.
Thank you. Any other further public comment? Any further commission comment? Okay, there being none, all those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item, the Lieber Cassidy Whitmore Agreement for Services. Can I have a motion?
Sure.
Mary Evelyn moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Susan seconds. All right. Any comment or questions from the commission?
Again, I just would like to state for the future, and I went back and I looked at the minutes from April of 2012 where it was discussed our use of Liebert and Cassidy and Kelly Tufo in our negotiations. And in the minutes, it says that the intent was not to use her to a high extent, but to use her to consult with, not to have her attend all the negotiations. And then more recently, I was told that that wasn't correct, but I found it in the minutes. So I would really like us to rely on our staff more exclusively for negotiations, and then use Kelly as a sounding board for issues that come up, because I do think we are using a lot of money that is not necessarily appropriate for our situation.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
Expert advice is always valuable.
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't contact her for advice. I'm saying that to have her come to every session, it seems like a waste of her time, and our staff is quite capable.
One thing that we have changed is she doesn't come for every meet and confer or every Labor Management Committee meeting. So that's the change that's taken place. It's just that the majority of the meetings have been negotiations this year.
And again, I don't know that she needs to be at every negotiation. I think, our staff is quite capable and could contact her if there was an issue that they needed to consult about.
Other comments from our questions? None? Okay, public comment?
Please don't shoot me, I'm only the messenger, and I hate to burst your bubble, but we have ended negotiations. Management declared impasse. That was their decision. We wanted to negotiate further, but they declared impasse. We went to mediation. They didn't budge. In fact, they offered us a worse contract than the one 88% of members voted down. So we, the union, have exercised our right to fact-finding through the Public Employees Relations Board. There will be a neutral party from PERB, one member of the union, one member from the library, and each of us will have an advocate, meaning a lawyer. Our lawyer, Carrie Ann Steele, is paid for by the union and by the members through our membership dues. The public is not paying for the union lawyer or for our lawyer to represent us. The library has opted to have Kelly Tufo as their advocate, I believe, and Richard Whitmore, the founding partner of Liebert, Cassidy, and Whitmore, will represent you. So you have Kelly Tufo and her boss, a founding partner of the same law firm, will represent you, the library management, in fact-finding, and we will have a union member who's a member of staff and our union lawyer. Remember, you're paying with the taxpayers' money. We're not. And after a year and 3 months of negotiations with Kelly Tufo, the expert, you have nothing to show for it.
I found the background information on this amount of money that you spent with the lawyer in the last year very confusing. And so, just to refresh your memory, Director Cooper signed a contract with Liebert Cassidy Whitmore on June 4th, 2012 for a period of May to December 2012. The contract was not to exceed $47,500 without a written consent of the client. In September, the contract was at $49,282, exceeding the agreement. In October, the contract exceeded the total amount of money budgeted for fiscal year 12-13 in line 6610 legal services. That amount was $40,000. In December, Director Cooper noticed a problem and brought it to your attention. You extended the contract through the end of this fiscal year by $60,000. To date, the total amount of the contract that was signed and extended is $102,647. There are still outstanding bills to be paid.
And 64,000 of that, 65,000 was negotiations, almost 37,000 was the PERB petition that SEIU signed that the library had to defend.
Whoa. Hi, I'm Neil Herring, and I'm a new member of the Sebastopol LAB, and a thankfully retired labor lawyer. But I'm really puzzled by this commitment to spend so much money on lawyers. As I understand it, there's an interest arbitration coming up. I think it's called fact-finding in the public sector. And no representative of management is deemed capable of handling the management side, either for the commission or the director. So as a result, having spent way over $100,000 on these lawyers, you're going to give them a blank check at the interest arbitration without even asking your own management to represent library management. I'm sure that this isn't intended as a vote of no confidence in management in dealing with the union, But how else can it be read if you have to rely on lawyers to deal with the union exclusively?
Hi, again, my name is Nancy Chimino, and the lawyer. I would just like to point out that y'all hired a lawyer, and so far, she lost a, what was it? The first thing that came up was we filed a PERB thing that you had violated by having people in closed session. So we won that. Then the PERB hearing that you pointed out, you spent $36,000 on, y'all lost it because we filed a petition on behalf of members who wanted to be staff who wanted to be part of the union. And we had already knew that they weren't really confidential, but no, you all had to try to prove that they were, and you lost. Now you're going to go into fact-finding based on the facts where, I don't know, if I was you, I'd be worried about it.
Why is this so high? Everybody who comes up here is so short. So my name is Dina Bliss, and I'm a volunteer with SOCOSOL, but I'm speaking to you about this not as a member of SOCOSOL, but as a tax-paying member of Sonoma County. I'm appalled at the amount of money you are willing to spend on lawyers, my money that you are willing to spend on lawyers, when you have a management team that is highly paid and should be able to perform these functions. It is outrageous to me that you would close the libraries on Mondays and spend this kind of money on Liebert Cassidy. Secondly, it appalls me that if you are going to get expert counsel, that you may or may not need, but if you are going to get expert counsel, that you go outside of Sonoma County and spend this kind of money on fancy San Francisco lawyers. That's what I have to say about that.
Any, yes.
After listening to all the work that you do and what you're trying to figure out and where's the money going to come from, I find it absolutely heartbreaking that we are so disconnected, that we can't fix an air conditioner, we can't do things for children, we can't do the things that we really want to do. And I just really, it's been going on and going on. And we have to represent ourselves because we have to protect ourselves, but it's gone to the point of, it's just, when is this going to stop? I really just want to know. I mean, it must be upsetting for you. It must be absolutely upsetting for you. You bring yourselves here and you donate your time and you're caring, but really, I don't know what the answer is, but please, please, let's get this together. Let's stop this disconnection. This can't happen anymore. Think of the community. We all think of the community. We're in a job that demands a lot of care and love and also taking care of ourselves. You support that. I know you support that. Please, let's get on this together.
Further comment? Any further comments from the commission?
I just wondered, since we did go over the contract last year, it was not thought through.
You mean the amount of money we budgeted
Right, for
originally?
Liebert and Cassidy, right, and we had to
Well-
go back in and had to raise that amount. So this 75,000 is supposed to cover just the fact-finding?
No,
Or-
it's for the year for Liebert Cassidy, but the budget is $115,000 for legal services because we also use county counsel
Right,
for other.
right, so I'm just, I guess I didn't realize that there would be two members for us at the fact-finding, since, I can't think of the fellow's name, from Liebert and Cassidy.
Mr. Whitmore?
Yes, is already an attorney Kelly will be there also?
Kelly will argue the library, your side of the issue
Oh,
in front of the fact-finding.
so do we have an estimate of what, what we will be paying for those, I think it's 3 days?
Plus the time, no, I do not, but we did explore other options and they were not available to us in the county.
I'm just concerned that we could go over our budget again.
Well, you might, but you might not because we had the PERB hearings that took even more time last year than the fact-finding will.
And we have safeguards in so that we are knowing when we're getting near the end of so we're not likely to go over.
Right. One would hope we'll have.
All right. Excuse me, quiet, please, thank you. Okay, is there any other comments from the commissioners? All right, calling for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed?
I oppose.
Okay, we have, we have 6 yeses and 1 no.
No, you have 5 yeses.
5 yeses, yeah, that's right, 5 yeses and 1 no. Moving along, Circe Dynex. Do we have a motion?
Oh, it seems my job tonight.
It's been moved by Mary Evelyn,
Second?
seconded by Tom. Is there any questions or comments from the commissioners? None? Any questions or comments from the public? All right.
Actually,
Yes.
I was just kind of curious, is this in addition to our 5-year?
The 5 years has ended, I think. Wait, no, Mike's here. This is the 5-year, covered by the 5-year agreement.
This is the 4th of a 5-year contract.
Got to raise it up.
I'll do this. This is the 4th of a 5-year contract to cap our maintenance fees at a 4.5% increase each year.
But the policy requires your approval before we can agree
Right, but
to-
this is the 5-year agreement. This is not an addition. This is our normal every year maintenance.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Any further comments from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. The reason I keep saying that is because Rebecca needs me to be clear for the minutes, so I keep looking over to make sure that it's not because I'm being redundant. Okay. This is regarding copiers.
Right, and Rebecca negotiated this, so if you have questions, she can answer them.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I so move.
Okay, moved by Helena. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Susan is the second. All right. Questions or comments from commissioners?
I have a question. This seems like a great deal. What's the downside?
I don't, if there is one. This is a new company who we have not used before. They sort of came onto our radar of their own accord, and they have really wanted to present a competitive offer, and I think they did.
Were you able to check with any other organizations that use them as their vendor?
I did. I
as a
got,
track record?
yeah, I got a pretty good sampling of recommendations for them.
Okay, any red flags from anyone of any aspects of weakness, given that they're a new organization that we've not worked with before?
There were no red flags that came up during my research.
And this is a 5-year agreement,
Yes.
Our previous agreement was for 5 years, too.
okay?
How soon can we get the new copiers?
A good question. They should be shipped to the vendor the second week.
Speak up just.
Second week of July. I sound so loud to myself. And we should be able to start putting them in branches, hopefully the third week of July.
Great.
I'm feeling little echoes in the corner of my mind about phone systems.
I was feeling those too.
And I'm wondering if there is going to be, is this a pretty straightforward copy machine to work with? Or is there going to be issues about staff development around using this particular copy machine?
It is pretty straightforward. We actually put together a little ad hoc team and went and played with them, and they are very user-friendly. They're not tremendously different than what we have now, except that they're new. But as far as usability, it's a similar interface. It's a touch screen instead of buttons. But the other benefit of this proposal is that they do provide ongoing, unlimited staff training. So I don't think we'll have to cut into our staff development funds for this one.
Okay. Other questions from the commissioners? Public comment?
Stephen Alford, back again, just very pleased to hear about this. I work the front reference desk, and we have been dependent on poor technology for too long, and I really appreciate that this is happening.
Thank you. Oops, I think we have another, just stretching. All right, no further public comment. Moving on to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. The next item is 13.3. The Library Commission will discuss the process for filling the vacant director's position, with Sandy deciding to retire. There are some issues that we need to start discussing. Sandy, you were leaving at the end of September?
September 20th.
September 20th is your last day. So it'd be nice if we get started on processes. Just as a review at this point, for where I know what's been happening, is that the commission needs to decide how we proceed. Do we create an ad hoc committee to proceed? Or do we give this to the personnel committee? There are issues such as, do we seek a new director now directly and do a search? Do we do an interim directorship? And if we do either of those two, how do we begin those processes? And the third possibility is, do we think about an interim director from within? And I think those are the three issues that are on the plate in terms of what I see. Thinking, ideas, people?
I think that given the Joint Powers Agreement Committee moving forward, I don't think anybody knows exactly what the Sonoma County Library system is going to look like a couple of years from now. And I would think that to go on out now and try to hire a permanent full-time director might be very difficult. I can't imagine, and I've done an awful lot of recruiting in my career, I can't imagine anyone taking the job when the first question that he's going to ask is, well, okay, what am I what am I going to be in charge of? And our response is, gee, we're not sure. So my suggestion would be to put the hiring of a permanent director off for a period of time. I don't know what that period of time is, but until we have some clear direction as to what the JPA is likely to suggest and then what will finally be implemented.
I think that there's a lot of value in what Tom is suggesting, but I would like to propose a different approach, slightly different. And that is, I think it's important that this search is a very public activity.
That the,
Pardon me?
I missed the word, I missed a word there, that this,
That this search.
Okay,
that
search, that's the
we
word I
will be
missed.
undertaking at some point is
Right.
become a very public activity. And to that end, I would like to propose that a step that we could take that is short of, hiring an actual company to help us do some of the things, is we can lay a lot of groundwork and do some footwork to get prepared for that. And so what I would suggest is that we establish a search committee that would include some commissioners, a member of the library staff who is a union member, a member of the management staff, a member of the library foundation, a member at large from the library advisory boards, and that through that committee, we have some public forums where we reach out to the community to ask for their input on what they would like to see a direction of the library in a library director. So I think the public has had a lot of opinions about this, and I think it would be a good opportunity to formalize that, their communication to the commission about that.
Are
And
you
so then
saying?
there could be forums throughout the county where the public is invited to come and just weigh in on what they would like to see in a director. That there would be other groups that we would tap to, like the parties of the JPA, and take all of that information and then come together and work up a new job description that would incorporate some of, the ideas. The commission would have the final say. But I think the job description probably needs to be revised at this point. And definitely, the contract process needs to be looked at. So this can give us some time to do those different things.
Are you saying in terms of the process, and I agree that the public input's important in the process, but are you suggesting this process for an interim or for our finding of a permanent?
For finding of a permanent.
Okay.
But I think that, the fact that the commission is suggesting not seeking a permanent director immediately gives us the time to lay this groundwork.
Okay. So you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth. So you're saying that if we were to go to the idea of having an interim director, that would not only the iffiness about what the JPA is going to look like, but also the fact that it would give us time to develop a process for the selection of a new permanent director. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
So I think I may have a slightly different view, but maybe some of the same elements. I think, and I'm focusing really on the permanent, not to say we don't need to talk about interim, but, I think the permanent, director is most significant in terms of, long-term success of the library. And that we want to have a very open, transparent, participatory process. But we also, I think, want to leverage expertise, and I would want to make sure that we use professional resources to help us do a national search. I don't think it should just be a local, recruitment process, which doesn't mean I don't think we should have local input and participation from the community. But I think our search, we want to have the best person who may or may not be someone in our local community. And would also want to leverage, best practices in terms of not only getting the word out nationally to recruit the best talent we can get, but also in terms of the process you were talking about. I'm sure there are communities outside of Sonoma County, outside of California, that have done very successful searches and involved their local communities. And I'd like to make sure that we can learn from what has, no doubt been done elsewhere, and reach out to professional resources to help us do that, which means, there will be some cost. And we don't have a lot of extra money, and we all know that, but I also think it's really important that we do a very high-level recruitment process, and do it right, and allocate some funds for that.
And I agree with you. I was only looking at the very beginning part of the process to look for the characteristics and the abilities that our community would desire. But absolutely, I agree with actually everything you said.
Okay, yeah. And then in terms of an interim, I think we do need to figure out what direction we go there. And I'm not saying that it's not important to have, a good interim direction. But in the end, I think that permanent person is really, where our resources need to focus on.
Other end of the table?
This is a very important position to fill, and I do agree the public should have some input. And I agree that we should go along the path, at least in my opinion, of the interim, so we have time to really review and see who the appropriate permanent director, and I also see that it does buy us time. I mean, the JPA thing is the sword hanging over our heads here. So I've been part of sort of this process before, and I know with all the issues, to get someone that's permanently going to agree to this is going to be hard. So I agree with Tom that it's going to be a hard process to try to find somebody that's permanent. So I would agree that the interim director would be the way to go, and then do the process of having some committee hearings and people more involved in it.
I think having an interim is critical, and I think it is extremely important that it's somebody who does that as their primary focus. I don't think it's something that can be done part-time in addition to their other duties by existing staff. I think it needs to be somebody else. I think it will be a huge benefit in making the search for the permanent person easier and better.
I think there's a couple of things that I want to say in terms of speaking directly to the public. That there is not a decided procedure yet to find a permanent director. It has not been decided. And many of us are of the ballpark of saying to be as inclusive as possible in that process is a piece of our guidelines for going forward to the selection of a permanent director. The other thing that and I think I'm speaking for everybody, but if I'm not, hold your peace. Anyway, then, moving along, the other thing that I think that's important to say is that I heard, I'm sitting in my computer room, and I hear rumors from the library. Can you imagine that? And one of the rumors that came to me was that possibly the commission was thinking about privatizing the library. I can say that that's never been heard from any commissioner that I've spoken to. That is not anything that, first of all, I don't think that it would be possible within the range of the JPA for us to do it if we ever wanted to do it, but I don't believe that that's anything that any of us have thought about. I just want to say that clearly so that those weeds don't spread and become more that we need to weed out. So the question, what I think, if I can summarize what I'm hearing, is two things. We're saying that we would like to have, we probably would need to go forward with a search for an interim. And secondly, that we, during that process, we're going to be developing a procedure for the selection of a permanent director. And that at this point, we don't have a timeline in mind for the length of an interim. Perhaps it's related to when we know what the new, we can maybe get the search started for the new permanent director. If the commission membership changes, they can be responsible for selecting that person or what have you. So the next question that I'd like to have input from you all on is I think Mary Evelyn is the only one who's spoken tangentially to the idea of whether we look for an interim internally or externally. And so I think that's one of the issues that we might weigh in at this point.
Could I suggest, this is just a lot of stuff going around in my head. There are two searches that have to happen, one for an interim and one for a permanent. And I'm wondering, I'm not recommending it by any means, it's just something which I often do. It begins here and comes out there awfully quickly. We have a committee to search for an interim director. And while that committee is doing that, we have a separate committee, not necessarily exclusive, person can serve on both, and that person will develop, or that committee will develop a process to search for a permanent director. Because I think a process for this is important. And I think you made some excellent suggestions about getting input, but we have to have some structure in that. We can't invite all of the citizens of Sonoma County who have library cards to come in and give us an idea. We have to have some kind of a structure about how we're going to go about looking for a permanent director. So, as I said, I'm talking off the top of my head, but I'm wondering if that's a possible thing to consider. Two different committees, one, I'm sorry?
The public forums was just one
No,
aspect.
I understand. No, yeah, there's much, much more to it. But we go after a temporary person, whether it be internal or whatever, and then the other group talk about, well, how are we going to go about getting a permanent? What's the timeline? Where do we go? Where do we look?
And I think the question internally or externally, there's not an either or. I think we do both for the interim. And that would be my opinion. But also, we're not the first commission to look for I mean, there are processes out there for finding the director of a library. And so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, so.
I'm sorry for that giggle, but
That's okay.
in the school where I taught, they hired a consultant who was in a motel room in Petaluma and had open meetings for the community to come in and give him input for what they wanted the new superintendent to do. So we have this meeting at the motel down at the Petaluma Lodge. Anyway, so that's what the giggle was. I wasn't responding to your idea.
So maybe I'm being too simplistic in my thinking, but I guess in my mind, the commission would establish kind of the search committee who's kind of would first order of business determine what direction to go for the interim. And I guess in my mind, interim meant pretty short term. I mean, I wasn't thinking, and that would be kind of a, not a big process with a lot of public input and all that, because it would be, Sandy's here through mid-September, you know, so we know we're gonna need someone in pretty short order, and we gotta figure it out, and so, you know, you have your committee and you say, okay, this is what we're gonna do, because in my mind, that person is there for some period of months, presumably, between Sandy's retirement and, you know, when we are now getting a permanent person. And then most of the energy and resources are going through, you know, figuring out that, what is hopefully a national recruitment and that whole participatory, transparent, involved process. And, you know, and that's where most of the energy goes. And that, you know, so I guess I wasn't thinking of two different committees. In my mind, it was the search committee
And they have two different tasks.
had two tasks. One task, which hopefully would be done in fairly short order. I mean, you know, so that by when you retire, there's someone there.
To put the
You know,
packet
that's
together.
not a lot of time. And then, you know, and then most of the energy resource, et cetera, is figuring out the long-term solution. You know, again, maybe I'm too simplistic in thinking about it that way and not giving
Well,
enough.
and I've had my ear to the ground, and I've heard that there are some agencies that can provide interns, and that they also, I sort of feel like, could help with this process of developing the process for finding a permanent director. What people can speak in here, but what my suspicion is that I don't know whether here's what I'd like to suggest. I'd like to suggest that we form a search committee, and that search committee come back to the August meeting with a proposal of how we proceed with finding an interim. And perhaps they may even come back with some ideas, whatever, but I'm just worried that we're getting to, that we have September, we have August and then September. But that we form a search committee and that they look at these ideas and come to us with a proposal at the next meeting. Does that seem, or, I hate to use the special meeting word, but that we call a special meeting after they meet, if we want to be timely. People have ideas or suggestions?
I'd just like to make another comment. Earlier in my life, I was in the recruiting business, and I have been part of search teams for other positions. And it's important, I think it's critical, that you start with I don't even know what the right word is. It is so important that you do it right. It is not important that you do it fast. And you'll make a mistake and regret it at leisure. The interim.
I'll regret it under the air conditioning in Healdsburg.
Right, exactly. You know, the interim, as I said, I think is critical, and we need that person or group or whatever to stay there as long as it takes to get the permanent person. We can't go into this saying, we're going to hire a permanent director in 3 months or 6 months. You cannot have that kind of deadline.
Okay. Emphatic?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, am I hearing any other ideas or suggestions before we move
Yeah,
ahead?
I've got one more.
Okay.
I liked your idea of having two separate committees because they've got different tasks.
Okay. So the first one is to get a search committee. I mean, not a search committee, an interim committee.
Right.
Okay, so an ad hoc committee for the interim. Public comment.
My name's Patty Hector. I'm the Central Branch Manager, and I have a letter from the staff that I'd like to read. Dear members of the Sonoma County Library Commission, the library staff would like to take this opportunity to commend you for your many years of service to the library. We appreciate your dedication and hard work, all the more impressive since you receive no compensation, and know that the welfare of the library is always your top priority. With the retirement of the library's director, it's our hope that whoever leads us through the transition as we search for a new person will be part of and understand the needs of our community. With so many stakeholders interested in the success of the library, we understand that the hiring process could take quite a bit of time that can be used effectively to heal the rifts that have plagued our library system. The staff is committed to the library's mission, vision, and value statement and seeks to work cooperatively with the commission and library management. Again, thank you for all you do. And this is signed by over 30 staff members, and we just got it 2 days ago.
Okay. Would you be sure we have a copy of that? Thank you. Sure. Okay, so the next step is to choose the search. Oh, excuse me, I'm not, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry. There are people in Sonoma County and locally who have served as interim directors before, even interim directors at this library. I think one of them was at Stephanie Kunkel's retirement party.
To follow, Nancy Chimino again, to follow Kim's note, currently there are quite a few people internally that have experience that, just to dispel, I understand your concerns that you'd want somebody to be able to do this full time and devote all of their energy to this. Well, we do have in place where, an example is when they were recruiting for Patty's position, for Central Branch Manager, we really needed to find a really competent leader. This is a huge branch. And so we took a lot of time working on the job description, the union together with the management, and came up with a job description. Everything was really wonderful. Took the recruitment process, as you all well know. And at that time, Doug, just an example is Doug Sisney, who is, as you all know, incredible, branch manager at Petaluma, actually came here, and they had Kate fill in for him and then got an extra help employee to fill in for Kate, I believe. I hope that's true. And so that's something, and he was able to devote, I don't know how long he was here, maybe at least 6 months. So, this is the type of thing that you could be thinking about. I'm just suggesting it because we do have really wonderful people on staff. And then the other thing I would like to point out is, Susan, I really, really doubt that, when you look at I'm always looking at the statistics out of the Sacramento on libraries, public libraries in the state of California. And who wouldn't want to move to Northern California, and who wouldn't want to be the 4th highest paid director of a public library in the state of California? So
My name is Dina Bliss, and I'm a volunteer with SoCOSOL, and I come to you now with my SoCOSOL hat on. As you know, we haven't been happy for a long time, and we haven't got a lot of faith in the process and haven't had a lot of faith in a long time. And one way that you might restore the public's faith and our faith is by appointing interim people that are currently part of the library, that understand Sonoma County, and that have a commitment to the Sonoma County Library, rather than going outside the system to find a so-called quasi-professional who can come in and act as the interim director. It doesn't necessarily have to be, from my point of view, a staff person, although it could be a triumvirate of staff people that take this on. But you could, in fact, follow up on Kim's idea that there have been several people who were interim directors who reside in the county who have been directors at the Sonoma County Library. So I implore you to look locally before you go to a professional search firm. Thank you.
Other comments from the public? Oh, yes.
Stephen Alcorta, local reference, central reference. I'm facing a challenging issue for me is that as I put myself in this new director's position and I ask, would I rather be dealing with you who have years of experience working with the library and you would be my commission, or do I come in hired later dealing with whoever knows what the JPA may produce? And so I'm new, they're new, I'm not sure how I feel about that situation. So I agree with Mary Evelyn that I really don't want to rush this, but I want you to consider what sort of structure this new person may be coming into that they might benefit by coming in sooner. Thank you.
Hi, Kirsten Merrihew, and one thing that I would just like to suggest is that the library commissioner position and its definition, as Helena mentioned before, is something that probably should be reconsidered.
You mean the director?
I'm sorry, the director's
Right.
position should be reconsidered because there may be some ways in which the public and you and other people who are concerned might wish the director to act differently or to have different job responsibilities than has been the case so far. So I do think that it would be a great idea to have some forums with the public and with other experts that I think can really clarify the situation maybe and give us a better idea of what we might be looking for. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Barbara White, and I work at the Central Branch. I'm a library technician. And I would like to thank you, the commissions, library commissioners, for your dedicated service to the Sonoma County Library for all these years. I know that in the past, there has been a vast difference between the management and the staff's vision of what's best for the long-term welfare of this public library system. But what we all have in common is our dedication to and our belief in this amazing public library system. And it is my hope that this recent notice of change in management that we can all get back to running a public library that works for everyone. Thank you.
Other comments from the public? Okay, further comments? My sense is that our task at this point is to create the search committee, one or two goals for it, or else two committees, but let's start with an an interim director to get started on that process. So is that, we're going to create that committee at this point, and they may take on the other things later. Are there people who would like to be on that committee? I thought you might. Okay.
I would do one, but not the other. I would do the interim, but not the permanent.
Okay, well, let's start you on the interim. And then if we decide that melds into becoming the permanent, then we will ask, you can resign and I can, okay, and I'll be on that committee also. So,
I would volunteer, but I have some real heavy commitments during July and August. So put me on with the possibility that I might have to ask for help.
okay, well, let's hold you in abeyance because if we put you on, then it's a four-person committee, and we are not an ad hoc committee, and but then you could maybe replace the person who's, okay? So the committee is the three of us, all right? Okay. Moving on to the discussion items. Oh, first of all, do we need a break? Yeah, let's take
Can
a
we turn
five.
the air conditioning down? I'm freezing.
I don't know.
It must just blow on that.
Let's take a 10-minute break. Convene. I've gotten the thumbs up. Let's move on to discussion items. Focus and finish. Any comments, questions?
This was an attempt to do a more in-depth quarterly report. I will tell you it's quite time-consuming for staff, but if this seems to be a little bit more like you want, we can certainly do it on a quarterly basis.
And it seems like once it's set up, then they can just add the new
I think
information
so.
to it, so.
And I did
as a
find it
template.
really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to commend Sandy, you, and then staff for putting this together. I really like the way the format made it, much easier for me to track.
Good.
Well, and I think for me, it's also, I mean, to know what the next steps are and where, what.
Right.
And quarterly means hopefully it won't be so much.
I do have a couple of questions about things, so it's not going to stop the questions. Could you just briefly, just talk a little bit about the digital branch? I had questions from my library advisory board in Sebastopol they want me to come and explain it a little better, and so.
Matthew should be able to really talk about it because he was on the committee that
All right,
developed
well,
the plan.
good. I'll count on him, but it's kind of.
The first thing is really to just overhaul the website so it's much more user-friendly and serves as a 24/7 library. And then I think there are other things that we're looking at, such as what we call a discovery layer, so that people can just do a single search and find the books and the magazine articles and all kinds of resources that we have on a single topic, so they don't have to go from here to there to there to there. So those are some of the early things I think we're talking about.
Okay, great. That'll be helpful.
Since I have totally delegated that, I'm not the best person to ask.
Well, I'm glad you reminded me Matthew's on that committee.
Yeah, so I'm sure he's been very active and developed the PowerPoint, helped develop that PowerPoint that David did for you.
Great. And then on the Cradle to Career Initiative, I know Kathy gave a little bit of a presentation about it some months ago, but, and at that time I recall that the commission was told that the library really wouldn't be changing a lot of programs or putting a lot more time into it than what we already have
They
going.
would not be.
Will not be,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just wanted to check back with you on how is that working and.
Well, I think it's been exceptionally good because they've been, the nice thing is developing those partnerships. They've attended several meetings with other providers in the county that it's been an opportunity to educate people about what the library does and also find out who's doing what for that age group. But once again,
So is the intent to just coordinate our efforts with the other
well, I think
county
look for
partners?
opportunities. The people from the Sonoma County Office of Education are coming. There's something that's called the Common Core Standards that's going to make some difference in the structure of education, and so they're trying to learn more about the Common Core so that they can determine what the impact is on the library. of this new Common Core and the new standards. I think we're also concerned sort of on a separate track about the lack of libraries in the schools. We've had many discussions about that, and certainly the JRAC has, and we had some discussion about that. It's trying to figure out if there are ways that we could get grant funding to develop some relationships with some of the schools to try to pilot ways that we can help the kids in these schools without school library media centers learn library skills and have access to the resources that we have and the resources that they do have in their schools. That's a huge challenge.
So you going to expand more on that in the future?
Well, I'm not.
Like at the next meeting or?
I don't think so. I think I had a meeting with some people from Elsie Allen and SCO and Mike McGuire one day to talk about what we might be able to do and collaboratively, but that was right after Kathy started being away, and I didn't want to pursue it without her being available to talk about how we might, they're really interested in making Elsie Allen a community center, but Efren doesn't think that the library should have Efren has a different idea about where any service in Southwest should be, so he didn't attend the meeting. So they're just little things going on all over the place, but I think it's going to take, we're going to have to wait till Kathy gets back and can provide some leadership in that effort.
Okay, and I forget when that's going to be. When's Kathy back?
Well, she may be in and out, but I think we're talking the December, the end of the year.
Okay.
She has 6 months of treatment.
All right, thanks.
I'd like to commend whoever was in charge of the minutes for the conclave. Maybe it's Rebecca.
It's Rebecca.
Oh,
that's right. It was a team effort. I'm sorry. Jamie and David and Rebecca, different people.
Because last year they took a long time to be,
That's Rebecca who got them pulled together.
so the fact that it was done so quickly, I really appreciate that. I'm doing a little hat changing here. Now I've got the Petaluma hat on. The configuration of the circ desk was supposed to start July 1st, according to one of the old.
No, you mean the book drop. That was
No,
different.
The circ desk.
The circ desk has never been in Focus and Finish.
Oh,
It was the book drop.
the book drop is being postponed.
Yes.
Okay, I just noting that. And I'm a little wondering a bit about, on page 7, the policy on public internet and public computer use. How are those different than what we already have?
Well, the public computer use, the public internet, we have the current practice, but we still have the same policy from the 1990s that we need to update to reflect the way we're managing that now.
Okay, and that's going to start next month.
I'm hoping that I can at least get a draft done, but I'm focusing on trying to get that office organized on some of the policies primarily, and just trying to leave things sort of ship-shape. So that's one of the things I'm hoping to work on.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, I have one question, but I'm not sure I'm not sure if it's appropriate to ask it here, or we should have discussed it already, or we're going to discuss it at some other point, so you can tell me. But, so if we look at a number of these, it's pending hiring CFO.
Yeah.
And I'm just wanting to know kind of our approach on hiring the CFO, if there's a change in that in terms of moving forward, and at what point in our agenda do we talk about that?
Well, I had thought you might talk about it when you were talking about the interim, but I think I'm concerned about being the one to lead the decision, and I'm also concerned about the pool. 'Cause
Right.
I think,
You and I talked about that.
I think it's not a strong pool.
Right.
So I think it's something that needs to be discussed in the context of the interim library director.
Okay. So that search committee,
I'll work with them on that. Because I think it's
That's part of their
just so critical to get somebody in here who can deal with the challenges that are there. And I just don't think anybody in the pool is.
So you're not going to interview anybody? So we're going to scrap the this
Well, I
recruitment?
mean, I was putting off any further discussion of it, but I will tell you that the pool, Susan looked at the pool and also made some telephone calls. And I would say the pool doesn't really offer anybody who can deal with the challenges that we have here.
And
It's not
instead
a
of,
deep pool. I will- Yeah.
it was shallow pool.
Disappointing.
Okay.
So I think it's something that needs to be discussed with the interim search committee, and we can come in with some recommendations.
Okay. I just didn't know where we would.
No, I'm glad you brought it up, because I've told the staff that I would let them know for sure whether it was going to be postponed or whether we were going to move ahead with the interviews, but I really am uncomfortable doing the interviews with that pool. If there was somebody who just blew us away, it might be different. But I worry about somebody trying to come in at this time of transition.
One of the things that I like about this,
Could we get, is everybody okay with that approach to
Oh, okay.
hiring the CFO?
So I guess, so then the search committee that you just set up for the interim
will take on
will
that.
also take on what to do about recruiting a CFO?
Or finding someone to be an interim CFO.
An
for a
interim
period of time.
CFO along with an interim director?
Yeah. Is that what people?
Yep.
I think there's still a lot to be gained by having the right interim come in and do some of the things that need to be taken care of.
I really like in this quarterly form that the issues and risks identified part. That was really helpful for me. And I'll just comment on how many of them require meet and confer that we're not doing. And is it a question, is it possible to have meet and confer when we're in the same state we are with the union? Is that?
As I understand it, they indicated they're not willing to do meet and confer until there's a contract. Is that correct?
Yes.
Jamie?
We were told, I guess a month or two ago, that the union did not want to do any meet and confers or LMC meetings until mediation was complete. And that is now complete, and we still have not got any scheduled meetings on the books.
Have we asked for meetings?
No.
Excuse me. Jamie, didn't we, in one of Kelly's letters, didn't she ask about that issue?
I recall an email exchange.
Which we never got a
don't-
response from,
I thought we did. We got a response from the president, Tom, saying that they wanted to focus on mediation and preparing for mediation, working through mediation.
But after that?
After that, I'm not aware of any.
Okay. I had my timing off. I was thinking that was only after that.
So you're going to check back with them to see if, because I think this is really important. These are safety, concerns that the commission has to make sure that these policies are in place and people are trained.
Sure. I suspect they might say, we'd like to focus on fact-finding and preparing for fact-finding and getting through that, but we can certainly check back with them and ask.
Thank you.
question on the monthly activities? Are we to that?
Any more on focus and finish, folks? Okay, let's go to monthly activities.
So what were the four pitch and ideas?
Oh, let's see. One has to do with, it's sort of complicated to try to do it out of context, and I just didn't, let me bring forward their brief proposals so you can see them, so you can see.
Okay.
But one is to do videos on how to use e-readers and how to download e-books. Another that Rebecca's doing is what's called a coding camp, where kids, particularly middle school age children, would come in and use a software program called Minecraft and learn to do software coding. There's a whole early childhood development and parental development program around something called a Play and Learn Island that focuses on the importance of play in child development and also takes the opportunity to do some work with the parents while the kids are being entertained. Which one am I forgetting? Oh, yeah, and then there's a joint program with the museum, the Children's Museum, to do exhibits in the libraries and programming around that. So
Great.
they're really, we were very excited that we got all four of the grants, plus the wine library grant. So we got 5 pitch and idea grants from the state library. There's one other thing I meant to put in here and I didn't. Friday, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I've forgotten the date. Keo wasn't here, I can remember that. The electricity went out partially in this building around noon. And then so they closed down the library because there were fans downstairs that were trying to run without electricity, so we had smoke, et cetera, which turned out not to be a problem. But in the meantime, PG&E came and they turned off all the electricity. And we had to take down all the computer systems in the network because there was no power. And the backup power couldn't last for, this went on for 4 or 5 hours, the loss of power. So we ended up closing Central. And also the phone system went down because the fail-safes weren't properly, our staff hadn't properly designed the fail-safe so that there was a way for it to roll over to another network. So we had sort of an interesting afternoon of no telephones, no network, no catalog, no service here at Central.
And the catalog was gone throughout the system.
Yeah, the catalog, the entire network was gone and everything on it. So we were sort of hamstrung for that Friday afternoon. It's provided an opportunity to reassess what happens here at Central because there's so many so many chiefs, trying to identify who's responsible for making decisions here, who closes the library, who decides to close the library, how we deal with patrons at that point, making sure staff has the right information if we do have to close. It was interesting, and identified the problems with the telephone rollovers and things like that. So it was an unfortunate experience, but a learning experience.
Thank you for that.
Also, it points out how critical electricity and technology are.
I was very interested in the Ever-Brown results.
Evergreen?
I know, but now it's Ever-Brown.
Oh. Aren't you cute?
We need levity at 10:15 at night. Anyway, thank you for that report, Jean.
I also thought it was a good write-up and appreciated, just like, it's not ready.
Not ready.
And we lost Mark.
Yeah, I saw that.
Although, when the time comes, he may be ready to come back. He's not leaving the area, totally.
Okay, any other comments about that before we move on to the status report on performance management?
backsliding.
A little backsliding.
Well, that's because, everything you have to stay up on everything.
I know that this system was designed by the staff. Is this process showing us that maybe it needs to be reviewed at some level?
I think the problem is really just staff getting used to doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think you want to redo the whole system now.
No, I know. I'm just,
I think at some point, yes, it's worth a review, but I think, yes, it really is a matter of staff just getting used to doing it. Even after that report was issued, there probably have been a good 15 additional documents that have come across my desk. So there really is a concerted effort, to complete them and complete them in a timely manner. I'm guessing that, we'll continue to see improvement next month and more significant. I mean, this month was barely any movement at all. But like I say, since the report was issued, there's probably been about 15 documents come across my desk. But it's a rolling thing. We get caught up there.
Right.
And then we have these others that are coming due and
But once you get the basic work plan in place and are rolling, it's not as difficult to keep up. The hardest part is, say, some of the higher level positions that require special attention and don't come with ready-made templates and things like that.
And we have, I have actually had conversations with all of the individuals who are currently outstanding right now to, see what is needed to get it moving, to get them completed and so forth. So, and I've spoken with their managers also. And so I'm confident that, it will come through,
Somebody needs to do Patrick's, but other than that,
so.
okay.
I mean, his work plan and his,
Well, he's of course written.
no.
I thought you were doing that.
Well, I need to. It's one of the.
Oh, that's what you mean, somebody. Somebody, okay, got it.
All right, then moving on to the financials.
Anything in particular you want to bring to our attention?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about 6521, the county services. We're going to have to be sure to increase the budget on that particular line for next year. And here's what happened. It's based on the number of claims that we actually have submitted the prior year. So let's see. The prior year, because, let's see. The 12-13 charges are based on the number of claims we actually submitted in FY 10-11. So the 13-14 will be based on the number of claims we actually submitted in 11-12. So they can tell us how much we should budget, but evidently we didn't do that last year. So next year, the charges are going to be, for just the claims processing, are going to be $155,000. Plus the cost for the flexible spending account administration at the county. Can we find out how much that is?
I sent an inquiry but I haven't heard back from them.
So so the problem really was in the original budgeting. We should have been able to tell that we were going to need 130, what is it, 138? 34 for this year, this time last year, and should have made those adjustments from the budget.
So next year it's going up even more. And I do remember somebody on the Board of Supervisors saying, what can we do? Ask us. Wouldn't a nice savings of $155,000?
Well, for so long, Rod Dole only charged us half and sort of ate the other half. And then the board increased his costs, so he turned around and increased our cost to the full 100% and not at 50%. So. That was one of the things that you had questions about. I think everything else is bouncing along. Were there specific questions?
Any of us have specifics? I noticed some discrepancies between time and year and spending, but the ones that I noticed most
Time
were,
and year and spending.
well, we're at 90% of the year and we've only spent 50% of the budget.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, I know, so those, I noted, but it's kind of nice that maybe we're spending less.
I think we're going to end up with fairly substantial, several $100,000 savings at the end of this year.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's what we have to look at.
And that's what you think by the end of July, kind of have a sense of it, or no?
They do all the closeouts. We usually get the monthly reports around the 20th of the month. I think the 22nd is the final closeout date for the fiscal year.
Any other questions? Any input from the public? Moving along to Library Association activities and updates.
Well, I know that, I believe you said Helena had a question about what memberships we pay for. So right now, each of the commissioners has a membership in the California Library Association.
Have we always had that?
Ever since I've been on.
I never knew about that, so.
But
I
then
mean,
there were
it's
some
great,
years when it
but-
didn't happen.
But I don't,
Where's my
I've been on for 2 years, and this is the first I knew about it.
Well, there used to be a
We try to
newsletter.
keep things as secret. No, that was with Caltech.
Okay,
That's the California Public Library Advocates now.
okay.
So what does this membership provide to us?
Well, if you go in and register, you get an email newsletter, and you could, and then you get access to the full website, and you get discounts if you go to workshops or conference.
And so this comes out of the budget under memberships?
Memberships, I believe. Rebecca's the one who checked on it for us.
And how much does it cost us a year? $70 per person. Okay.
This said,
This is
That's
a
another
different
organization.
membership. That's a different organization.
CPLA.
Used to be called Caltech, and it's now called California Public Library Advocates. So the question is, they have workshops in Northern California and Southern California every year for friends and trustees. And you do get a newsletter, or they have done, the Cal Tactics is their newsletter.
Wasn't there a magazine from?
It's a magazine newsletter.
Okay. And
So the question becomes, did you want us to, we can do a group membership, let's see, $23 each for 5 or more board members. Or we could do individual memberships for you for $50 a pop. So that was one of the questions is, do you want to belong to both?
or do we want to belong to this one instead of California Library Association?
That's up to you all.
So maybe we should think about it and come back next time and
Okay.
talk about
Yeah,
it.
because,
So-
go ahead.
So the one that we belong to already, we all belong to the California Library Association, is that something that we need a password, or we just go onto their
You
website? Or
can go on and register on their website. We'll have to double check on that and get you the
Okay.
details about
Maybe
how to
just
do
shoot
it.
us out an email,
Sure.
because
And we can see
if it's a
worth it.
resource that can help educate us on,
Right.
library information that we should know, then that would be good.
Yeah, I think that the CLA membership is probably not as helpful as the CPLA membership would be to you in your current roles.
Well, and
CLA is not as strong as it could be.
What says it comes, is that the one? No, this one says it
That's
comes
the other
out.
one.
The thing that I really was intrigued about here is members you'll receive according to the newsletter, and they could provide
Some
training to your library,
Board effective.
for effectiveness training at no cost to your library. And that was one of the things that came out of the grand jury report, was we were saying we needed.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're the best ones for board effectiveness. I think that the Special Districts Association training is probably more relevant to what you want to learn than what Caltac does. But this would be one thing to do at the beginning, I mean, or as a start.
What about the ALA as an association?
CLAs.
No, it's not. It's the American Library Association. It's much more expensive. Yeah, we can look at it, and I'll be happy to bring you information about ALA membership. They have a very strong Friends and Trustees. I've forgotten, it has a new name. It used to be ALTA, but I've forgotten what the name of the division is that represents board members and friends and foundations and all of that.
There's a California branch for ALA.
No, there's CLA, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that way. I know.
No, you're right.
The California Library Association is a chapter of
Chapter
the
of
American
the
Library
Library
Association.
That's what happened.
But they don't have, it's not like there's a formal relationship. The state associations are chapters of the National Association, and
It's confusing.
And somehow in the back of my mind, there's some statewide conference that would be at the same time as our November meeting?
well, that's why, that's the agenda item.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to point out to you that Rebecca, who's on the program committee for CLA, will be at CLA at the same time that your November meeting is scheduled. It's in Long Beach. So, starts on that Saturday, I believe, and goes through Tuesday. Is that correct? Pardon me?
Sunday through Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think you should all come and we can have the commission meeting there.
Well, there's maybe
yeah.
some Brown Act issues regarding that, but we could do.
So the question becomes, do you want to plan on having your commission meeting on the 4th of November, or would you be, the problem is you can't postpone it a week because the next Monday is a holiday, a library holiday.
And the meeting goes from Saturday to Tuesday?
Through Tuesday.
So that particular time, we could maybe do a Wednesday meeting that
Could.
week?
You could. Helena would come straight from the Sebastopol lab, but.
It's okay, we'll do important decisions before she gets here. And you won't get parking. So that is, do people agree with that? Right now, we can just make that
That's fine.
direction?
So that would be November, though.
Right, and those of us who
6th.
want to go to Los Angeles,
Long
to Long
Beach.
Beach can.
Yeah.
I will just come
The,
back.
you can, the pre-registration information is already out for the CLA conference in November.
I have a question about a Brown Act kind of question. If we all became members of the CPLA and they have a Northern California meeting and more than a quorum of us go to that meeting, do we have to agendize that we've gone to that meeting?
No, you just can't talk about it.
We just don't sit with each other and talk about
You have
library.
to pretend you don't know each other.
Or else we just don't discuss library issues, but
Right.
we can discuss the sessions we've been in.
Right.
And you can't eat any donuts.
Well, then
But I will, we will double check on all the information about CLA and the CPLA and ALA, just so you all have it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Any public comment on that, the aspects we've just discussed? Moving on to Library Advisory Board, there are none. Moving on right beyond that, I believe that, oh, first of all, we have instituted the new, we've instituted the new process of sending out the lab newsletter, which we had volume 1, number 1 of. Do we have a kind of rundown of what we would like to be sure to inform the labs of?
Not a
from this
lot
meeting?
this time.
Well, we've appointed a committee to look for an interim
Right.
director.
Right.
And
You know, the information about the phone service being reviewed, I think that's important.
right? We had a report from the Roner Park Lab on their open house.
Also, you might, well, I guess what I was going to say, the copy machines, the labs don't care about them, the staff cares about them.
Because they're the public too, and
Yeah.
I know people have complained about those public copy machines.
Okay. Anything else? The only thing I would say is, if in the future, as we come across this time in the agenda, and there's something that we really want to be sure to get, instead of just informing the labs about what we've kind of been doing, if there's anything that we're going to want to have them come back to us with.
Can we ask the Roner Park Lab if they're comfortable, if this is all going out electronically?
Yeah.
Yes.
If we can send as an attachment the PowerPoint that they showed us, because that might be very interesting to the other labs to give them an idea that maybe they want to do something similar. And just have it be as an attachment, if they're okay with that.
And I think you had
Or
some-
can we put it on the website and send them the link?
However
It's a
it's
little
best
more
distributed.
Complicated with our current.
I think you had something in the last one about the opportunity to come at the beginning of the agenda, so, but maybe keep promoting that.
Yeah. Anything else? From the, I believe we are adjourned.
This is one of the longest.
That was a long one, I can tell.